Okay, everybody, so today I'm going to be showing you how to use VCarve to make uh, a project using two different tool bits. So I'm going to do this by tracing an image, and the picture that I'm going to use something simple like the Among Us crewmates here, just to keep it nice and simple, to keep things not so complicated. So step one, I'm just going to copy the image like I do for most other things, and I'm going to put it into Inkscape. I'll just start a new one here so you can see what's happening. And I'm going to paste the picture in. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. So I'm just going to go to path and trace bitmap like we do like with a bunch of other things. I need to change the threshold on this. If I use the usual brightness cutoff of 0.45, we end up with mostly black shapes. I just want to get the outline of the characters, so I'm going to drop this down to about like 0.2 or so, which gives me just these lines. That's the part that I want to carve out with the CNC router. So these two shapes here, I'm going to save them as they are, and I'm going to hit Save As. These ones I'm actually just saving as an Inkscape type of file, because VCarve brings in Inkscape files. So let's call this Among Us 2.svg. Sounds good. Okay. Now, into VCarve. I'm going to use a block of wood that I have here in front of me. Another part of this is that I want you to actually measure the piece of wood as you're setting up your tool paths. So with this one, I want these two characters to be horizontal on here. So as I'm setting up the job dimensions and everything, I want the width to be this dimension of the board, which I'm measuring with the tape measure. It's 11.5 inches, so 11.5 inches. The height of this board is about 5 3/4, or at least close enough, so 5.75. And the thickness of this board, this is the really important one to measure very accurately. I'm actually going to measure this one with a caliper and not with a tape measure, just so I can get it a little more precise. And with the caliper, it's exactly 0.75 inches. That's exactly 3/4 of an inch. 0.75. Okay. Other things that you need to double check as you're setting up your stock here, check to see that the Z0 position is on the machine bed, and check to see that the XY datum is in the bottom left corner. Okay, so here's our board. What I'm going to do now is use this one here, import vectors. And I saved it as Among Us 2, so let's open that up. And there they are. So our little images showed up. They're a little bit off the page, so we're just going to need to move them over. Moving things, node editing, transform, move. Some programs it's kind of hard to move things around. In VCarve, they got this nice function that shows you the middle of your board as you're moving it around. So I'm just going to pick these up, basically pull them over into the middle. Okay, that's good. That's close enough. So now what I want to do, I want to start building some tool paths around these. Okay, so I'm going to select all of the lines here. And let's start with a V-carving profile around these. So we're going to make a profile toolpath. And let's go through all of the numbers here. The start depth should be 0 inches because we haven't cut into this board yet. So you just leave that one as 0 inches. If our cut depth was 1/2 inch, that would be crazy. We would be carving 1/2 inch into this board to try to get these little fine details, which isn't what we want. With this fine V-carving bit, we only actually want to go like barely scratching the surface. So I'm going to try like 0.05 inches. That's 50 thousandths of an inch. That's just barely scratching the surface. I want to machine on these lines, and I don't want any ramps or toolpaths or anything like that. So we're going to call this one sure, we'll call it the profile, because this is the profile. Now let's preview this to see what this is going to look like. Oh, interesting. I don't think I changed the tool bit. Let's go back and edit this. Yeah, that'll do it. So this is definitely an important thing to make sure you got right. If I'm trying to cut this with the flat end mill bit, it's definitely not going to see the details that I think it will. So let's edit this. Or sorry, we want to select a different tool bit. And we want to use this 60-degree V-bit here. Okay? While we're on this screen, what you should do is change the feed and speed settings. It wants to move at 100 inches per minute, which is good. If you're in like a factory and you want to make these really quick, that's a good fast speed. But when you work really fast with wood, you end up chipping the wood quite a bit. So the faster you go, the worse the surface finish is going to show up. Also, it's harder on the machine to make it move faster. So I'm going to slow this way down. I'm actually going to slow it down to about 40 inches per minute. And I'm going to plunge at half that rate of about 20 inches per minute. Okay, so our tool bit is set. We're going to need to recalculate this tool path and reset the preview of our board. And now preview these again. Now that looks a little better. So let's rotate around a bit and see what's actually happening. So we're just basically carving into the surface of the wood here. I'm happy with this so far. But I want to add at least one tool bit change in here, and I want to give it a bit of two-dimensional or three-dimensional profile. So let's make another one. I'm going to switch back to the 2D view to make another tool path. This time what I'm thinking is I'm going to do just a little pocket in their view, like in their helmet shields here. So I'm going to select both of those two. I'm holding shift as I select them both. Go into tool paths and close that down. I'm going to make another tool path. This one's going to be different. I'm going to call this one a pocket tool path. So the start depth, again, it starts at 0 inches. The cut depth, if we're cutting an inch through a board that's only 3/4 of an inch thick, we're going to be cutting into the machine bed. So that's definitely not what we're trying to do. I only want to carve down basically as far as I carved with the other bits. So I'm only going to go about 0.5 inches down. Make sure you make the right tool on here. I'm going to use a 1/4 inch end mill. Again, your feed should be about 40 and 20, not much more than that. It gives you some options about how you're going to clear out this pocket. I don't think you need to worry about that quite yet. We'll just call this pocket 1 for now and calculate it. So now, let's see what happens as we carve these out. You don't really see much of a difference, but it does kind of carve that little bit out there. Okay? There's lots more that we could do about this, but that was basically it. That is saving things for two different tool paths here. But before you take this to the machine, before you actually save it to be made, you cannot save two different tool bits as part of the same tool path. Because obviously we need to switch the bits out before we run the second tool path here. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to select profile, which is going to be my one profile. And we're just going to save this one. Make sure this isn't selected. Output all visible tool paths to one file. I definitely don't want that for this. Okay, so this one is with the V-bit. Got the right post processor. Save the tool path. I'm going to plug in the USB stick and actually save these to the USB so that I can make them in 5 minutes. And save the tool path. Let's save it to USB disk. We're going to call this the Among Us profile.mmg. And I'm actually going to put in there Among Us V-bit profile so that when we're at the machine trying to figure out which tool path each one is, we know which tool, like which tool bit to put in there. Okay, same thing for the other one. I just need to select just the one pocket, save the tool path, and why does it say profile? Make sure it's that one. Save, pocket 1, yes. Save this just as Among Us end mill, which is the name of the tool bit for pocket 1. Alright, so now these two tool paths are ready to be made. Thanks for listening. Catch you on the next one.